Welcome back to Champ Talk with Branden Hudson. I am your host, Branden Hudson, as you already probably know that. For some reason, I felt the need to tell you that again today. Got a solo episode for you guys today. You know what I mean? We had a couple of technical difficulties go down, and so our guest is gone. We had Big Chet up in the building, and we just got to run a solo now. But so anyway, why I say that is because I'm whipping it off the cuff, baby. So who knows what I'm going to say? Pack your lunches, get ready, put your seatbelt on because it could get wild and weird up in here. But before I do that, please, like we ask all of episodes, like, subscribe, share this with somebody who would get value out of this. Let them know that, you're thinking of them and that you think that this episode could help to give perspective. That's all we ask of you. Maybe a review if you're feeling kind, and then go from there. So we just had Thanksgiving. This is probably 2 weeks from then since you guys are going to see this, but we just had Thanksgiving. We just had a time of year where, you know what I mean, we're super grateful and super thankful and all that good stuff. I'm not a big fan of the people that don't celebrate. I mean, do what you want. I don't hate on you, but there's been a handful of people I've seen make it out to be something that just is, so negative and so down and all that stuff. And look, we all know that history is ugly, and we all know that the things that our country has done, in the past has not been, the most respectable, commendable, been downright horrific. You know what I mean? That's not a big secret. I think you've seen that in just about every country that's existed. The thing about it is for me, I don't ever want to erase history or erase what's happened. But I always want to be a optimist about things, and I want to paint a better picture for our children, paint a better picture for our youth, so that we don't live in such bitterness and such violence and hate and all that stuff. Because it just seems like everybody's so mad. But I'm not going to get into that tangent right now. Maybe we'll circle back on that. I was very thankful this weekend for many reasons, and one of the reasons was I got to get together with some old buddies of mine, and we try to do this like every year. A couple of us are from, a couple of them are flying in or driving in from out of town. And this was my crew. This was the people that we used to, do those illegal activities with. And, we had a tight little crew that we used to run and do things. And, I'm not quite sure I'm going to frame this episode. So it might come out raw. It might come out in ways that, don't sound the most appealing as far as the brand and the image that I have now. But again, our history can't be silenced, and our history can't be sat here and forgotten. You know what I mean? We have to remember where we come from. And I was reflecting on some of the things that, me and the guys used to do. And when I look back on when I was, in the game and let's be frank. So I didn't sell cocaine. I didn't sell crack or heroin. I was a marijuana dealer. You know what I mean? That was my thing. I'd had a couple things come across my lap throughout the course of my 20 years in the game, 18 years in the game. But my main gig was weed, and it was large quantities, especially back in those days. It was in the multiple triple digits in pounds every 3 to 4 months, every 3 to 4 weeks. It was a full-on system, you know what I mean? And I've done time for that. I'm remorse for that. I don't ever want to paint a picture of being the guy that made it out, because there's not many people that I know that have made it out. You know what I mean? My boys that we all were getting up with, they did. But the problem was there was a lot of them that weren't there that night, and not because they couldn't make it. Because they were dead, because they were in jail, because they're on drugs, because, whatever happened, they were victims of the game and charged to the game. Whatever the case might have been, those are the things that we've lost along this ride. And I was sitting back just being super grateful that I made it out. I made it out of that world. I try my hardest to not talk about that as much as I know that maybe some listeners like to hear, that some people want to get into. And I see a lot of these guys go online and they do their prison reviews and stuff, and they do their mafia dimes. And, look, whatever works, whatever's making you money and feeding your family. I've spent so much time trying to get away from that brand or get away from that image, excuse me, by building a brand, that I didn't want to confuse the people that were following me with thinking that, you know, getting into that world will have a payoff or will have a way out. You know what I mean? There's been a lot of things that I've come across that I shouldn't even be alive. One of the things I remember, and I'll do some story times here. I remember at one point, right, me and, you know, an associate of mine were, you know, we were running around doing our thing, you know what I mean? And again, whenever you're dealing with hundreds of pounds at a time, and again, I've paid for my crime. This was all, you know, a long time ago. You know, I've spent 10 years paying back to society, becoming a productive member of society. So this episode is for educational purposes only. This is to give perspective and insight on how tough it is and how much you're sacrificing if you decide that you want to go down that route. And I'm hoping that this episode will help give perspective to those who are thinking about going down that route, to not go down that route. For those who are in that mix, to try to give them a perspective on a way out. And for anybody that's, you know, second-hand or third party involved to some degree, whether you're a parent or a loved one or a spouse, then you can give some perspective and insight on what you need to do to protect yourself and help these people to get out of the game. But I remember one time, me and a buddy of mine at the time, we're running around and we're doing our thing, and you know, when you're in that life, man, it's a lot of partying. It's a lot of, you know, grind all day out in the nightlife at night. And, you know, we go out to the local watering troughs, the local bars around here, and they'd have a theme each night, and you'd have a little crowds that would follow each other, just the way most local small towns are. You know where you're going, you know who's going to be there. And, you know, you're just trying to get out there and get fucked up and go out there and get some pussy and go all that shit. I mean, let's just be real. It is what it is, right? And I remember we had a time where we were out and about, and one of the girls that my buddy was sleeping with, she was doing her thing as well. She was doing other types of illegal activities. And man, I was wasted, drunk, you know, high up, whatever. And I'm over here, and one of her friends started hollering at me, started, you know, trying to see what was up, trying to go home. And, you know, of course, my dumb ass was like, yeah, baby, what's good? You know, I'm doing a little lingo and the talk and switch the numbers. And back then we had pagers, and we're switching the numbers and shit. And basically, we're going to hook up that night, right? And again, not my proudest moments, but, you know, this is what it is. And I had, you know what I mean, you know, a little bit of work left on me. You know, I dropped off, and I had a lot of cash on me that night. You know what I mean? And you know, there was rules that you followed in the game, and I wasn't a dummy, but it's so crazy repeating this shit now when I talk about it, because it's like the things I'm about to tell you are just so much red flags and just the baseline of the way of thinking. But anyway, you know, she wanted me to meet her at a hotel. I went to pick her up, you know, took her to another hotel because I didn't trust that hotel because she might set me up, you know, 6'7", right? And we ended up going to another hotel and getting in there, you know, we're in the room, we roll up a blunt, we're sitting there chilling, we're hollering at each other, whatever, talking, you know what I mean? All of a sudden, on my door, right? Knocks on my door. I didn't have my gun on me. I was caught slipping a mode, so to speak. And, you know, I knew what time it was. I knew that it was, you know, it was somebody coming to rob me. And she jumps up to go answer the door, you know what I mean? I just snatch her up and grab her by her hair and sit her down, you know what I mean? Because at this point, it's dangerous, right? And I look out the window, see a couple dudes out there, and I just went with my gut instinct, and I just opened the door aggressive. And I'm like, you know, what's up? You know what I mean? Like trying to be the tough guy, trying to be aggressive. And I don't know if that distracted the guys or if that pushed them off a little bit. I also knew that a lot of people knew me back then in that world, and they knew who my peoples were and who we hung out with and things like that. So, you know, I didn't know basically what it was that these boys didn't run up in my hotel room and lay me down, but they didn't. And they like, you know, they asked for the girl if she was there and and, you know, basically, you know, that was it. She walked out, and the bad part was I was looking at one direction at one of the guys, and another guy was on the other side of the door. I didn't even fucking see. Like, you talk about divine intervention and God being with me, right? I didn't even see this guy. He was behind me. He could have cracked me, did whatever. I mean, I was totally slipping, totally chasing pussy and thinking with the wrong head. And ultimately it was, something that almost got me. And she rolls out, they leave, and I shut the door and I about shit myself because I knew that I was God, and the fact that I didn't get laid down and the fact that I didn't get, robbed and so forth and cut up was not even, I didn't look at that as a win. I looked at how stupid I was and how foolish I had made a mistake. I've got all this money in the car. It was a very, very foolish mistake. And lo and behold, I had to learn from that lesson. But that's not where it ends. You know what I mean? That's one lesson that I learned. The other side of it is I want to know who set me up. I wanted to know who sat there and had said, hey, this guy's the guy you need to go after, because it was just way too convenient. Look, I know me. I'm a well put together guy. I can dress pretty good. I'm clean cut. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't say I'm fugly or ugly, but I wouldn't say I'm God's gift to the world when it comes to looks and stuff like that. And I didn't work out back then. So, I didn't have the muscle tone and the looks into the shirt and things like that. And everything was baggier back then. So, you know what I mean? I know that if I keep her giggling, she'll, that ass will be jiggling, but it's all personality, all swag. It's not looks. So it wasn't like that I just walked up to this table that night and just wowed this chick off of her feet because of my boyish good looks. You know what I mean? And I knew that. So I knew that there was a missing link on why this girl wanted to take me home so bad or wanted me to take her home so bad. And, so basically what happened was I started calling the number back. You know what I mean? I started talking number, and then, this girl fucking talking cash money, dog. Like she's just about it, show enough. You know what I mean? Just a little petite little white girl, you know what I mean, from the country, but she just was so ghetto and gangster. She was going to do this and do that and bop, bop, bop and all this, right? Well, that was up until the point that I had somebody work at the phone company for me that gave me her phone number, her address, whose account it is in, all that good stuff. So when I mentioned that the next night on the phone, she quickly changed her tune and ultimately, told me where her, who set me up and why. And so now I got this girl that, you know what I mean, was supposed to be kind of cool with us and friends with us, that now was trying to set me up on the low, you know what I mean, to get robbed for whatever reason, I don't know, to ultimately try to take me out. And, needless to say, these are the types of things that happen in the game. And the funny part is the girl that did it never found out that she got told on. I just sent one of my guys up in her house and they cleaned her out, and robbed her and got her messed up. Again, none of this stuff is anything that I'm trying to promote as a healthy lifestyle. It's certainly not. It's even cringy and crazy when I actually repeat the stuff out of my mouth as to, what went down and how all this broke ground. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's a part of the life that I live. It's a part of my story. And to know that that's the type of shit that was every day. I mean, I love the comedian Drewski. Dude, he's awesome. He's so funny. I liked him before he really blew, but he's got he did one of his skits where he talked about, street dudes do like 1,000 things in a day. And, they'll be outside doing their thing. And that's really what it was like, man. You would do every single day was like an adventure in itself. You know what I mean? And it was like, and I don't mean adventure in a good way. Like there was so much going on. It was like every single day was something new. It's some bullshit going down. Somebody got somebody's doing this. Somebody's there's a new deal going on here. It's always something, new drops on Jordans. And dude, it's always something, right? And you know what I mean? One of those times was, you know what I mean, when one of my good friends was murdered, man. He was just a nice kid, man. He was a great dude. Fun fact, him and I shared the same birthday month. We were only about 20 days apart. And his mother and my mother used to sit into the clinic pregnant and meeting, going to the doctor when they were pregnant with him and I. We had known each other since middle school and since high school. The kid had a degree. He was a good guy, right? He wasn't a drug dealer, right? He was in the band. He played soccer. He was at basketball. He was just a great guy, man. Great, great dude. one of those kind of guys that everybody got along with. Wasn't a very big guy, wasn't a gangster, didn't portray none of that shit, man. None of that shit. And unfortunately, you know what I mean, he was just trying to have a good time one night. And you know what I mean? And again, I'm going by what we were told and what was passed along, because you know, you don't know the truth because we weren't there, but you hear about so many different situations. And basically, you know, another girl set him up, and next thing you know, these guys are in the back waiting on him. You know what I mean? They beat him up. They duct tape him. To my understanding, they, you know, had done some heinous acts to him to get him to give up, you know what I mean, phone numbers, mine and my boy's phone number, to pay the ransom. You know what I mean? And, you know, it hurts to know that he didn't get a chance to do that. First of all, we never got a call, right? So what ended up happening was, because of the duct tape they put around his mouth, they ended up so he's suffocating him to death. And you know, I mean, that's how the autopsy said that he passed. And what's crazy is we'll never know. Me and my boy will never know if, you know, he just thugged it out and didn't give up our number, or, you know, if he died too soon. I would have much rather given up our number and us, you know, paid the ransom and kept our friend around. But it didn't work out like that. You know what I mean? And unfortunately we lost a really good soul and a really good person. And that fucked me up, man. That fucked a lot of us up, man, because of the guilt and the responsibility that we felt being in that world and in that game. You know what I'm saying? Like, this guy was not a drug dealer. This guy was just a good kid. He was just friends with us. And some fucking dirtballs thought that it was a good idea to go ahead and try to set him up and rob him and get to us, or whatever the case may be, whatever the fuck it was. They just thought that was a good idea. And now, you know what I mean, you have 4 families and 4 lives that are changed, because it was 4 of them actually, if you count the girl. You know, I almost said bitch, you know what I mean? Because that's how I really feel, to be honest with you. But if you count the girl, you know what I mean? That's a mess of lives being changed because of selling marijuana. And it sounds crazy when I say that. And mind you, this is not when dispensaries were every corner of the cities and when weed was legal and all. This is back when it was still the wild, wild west, and motherfuckers was getting, you know what I mean, like double digit numbers for having, you know, large quantities of marijuana. Like, this is what's crazy, right? This wasn't when, you know what I mean? This isn't now, like, where if you can drive around and it smell, you know, you drive behind a car and you can smell fucking weed coming out of the cars. This is nowhere near like that. And so yeah, I mean, just selling weed, you still thought back then that it was just weed. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we used to excuse ourselves. It's just weed, man. It's just, you know, it ain't coke, it ain't crack. And us drug dealers made that excuse or that reason why we did it, because we thought we were taking the ultimate gamble, because we were taking care of so many people in our family and helping so many people out. And it's just crazy, the mindset, when I come to think about it. So, you know, you're talking about some smaller town dudes that are, you know, selling large quantities of marijuana that you know, are doing some shit on the streets and some crazy shit, but not really like, it wasn't like we were on the block, you know what I mean, and in the inner hoods, you know what I mean, but we were still, you know, still out there and doing crazy shit and gangster shit, but it wasn't like we were on the block or anything, or you know, we were just had this little cool group of people, and we were just selling bud, and we thought that it was okay. Now you got our friends getting duct taped and murdered because they didn't give up our phone number, because they got set up and all this other crazy wild shit, man. And that's the things that people don't tell you about the game. You know, they don't tell you about, like, everybody talks about the money to be made, right? But nobody tells you about, like, yo, like, when you're doing it at that scale, right, you only got 1 or 2 moments of the month that you're going to get read up, right? And I'm not trying to be like no little snitch or anything and try to give up too much of the information, because, you know what I mean? Like, first of all, I don't even know how it works nowadays. You know, I've been so removed from it. But when you're dealing with that, when you're dealing with people fucking up your money and people hitting your stash houses and people sitting here and you know, having to pay the money back and they're not quite ready at the time because it's not working or whatever have you, You know, and it's not moving like that. Like you have these stresses and these deadlines that people don't really understand goes down, right? And you got to figure it out. Like if you don't get to work for that month. And that's the stuff they don't tell you about. Everybody tells you, it's like the gambler that tells you about the time he wins, but don't tell you about the time he or she loses all the fucking money all year or whatever. But it was insane, man. It was insane with some of those stories. I can't tell you how many people that owe me money to this day. You know what I'm saying? Like I owe money to this day, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Like there's a couple people that I owe money to that is just, it's basically like charges to the game. You know what I mean? Like obviously if I came into some bread or something, I'd probably take care of them. But it's just one of those things where it's like, it was a unfortunate amount of circumstances that happened where, we all lost, you know what I'm saying? But there's so many people that owe me money that, for like $50, $100, $200 that, they don't even speak to me no more because they're ashamed of themselves or they, or whatever. It's my fault. You know what I mean? There's countless things. I had a family member break into my fucking house. I just had brought this family member around me. We had just linked up. I was trying to help him out. And, you know what I mean? He ended up fucking robbing me and breaking into my house. And, we knew it was him. And, later on, he ended up admitting it. And, you get to a point where, like, over time, it's like, all is forgotten and forgiven and things like that because, he wasn't in his right state of mind. And I clearly wasn't in mine. But, man, like, they don't tell you about that shit, man. They don't tell you about the women that are trying to set you up. They don't tell you about, the family members that are going to, try to come after you, the friends that aren't your real friends or just snakes. It's just, I'm so thankful and grateful to have made it out alive with just a felony and just a year's time in jail and just the minor setbacks that I've had because so many people haven't, you know what I mean? So many people haven't made it out. We had a homeboy, he was friends with my boy and great kid, man. A lot of people looked up to this guy. A lot of people loved him. And at the time, there was just this Omar motherfucker. If you ever watched The Wire on HBO, it was this dude named Omar on there that was just a menace to the drug dealers. I mean, he would rob all the drug dealers. He would kill a lot of them on that show. And we had a dude in the area that was onto us that was like that. And he was slippery. You couldn't really get a hold of him. The guy had, to my understanding, beaten a couple of fucking murder charges and beaten a couple cases that they got free. And to my understanding, been shot. I mean, there was like a whole rap sheet about this guy, you know what I mean? And he was running around the city, robbing drug dealers, robbing people on the blocks, robbing whatever. And he had gotten on to us and my team and what we were doing and so on and so forth. And then he found out where a couple of one of our homies had lived, two of our homies had lived. And unfortunately was the guy who ended up killing another one of our homeboys and murdering him. And again, it was so senseless because it was like, dude, we're talking about bud here. We're talking about marijuana, right? But again, when you're dealing with those kinds of levels and those kinds of amounts, it's drug dealing. I don't give a fuck what anybody tries to say, man. It's drug dealing. And the unfortunate side to drug dealing is, what comes with it. All the gangster shit, all the street shit, all the shit that you don't think about when you're out here trying to start flipping some bags to make some extra money, right? And I get and I understand the sense of urgency, man. I do. Listen, I was a poor kid, man. We were lower class. We struggled, man. And I had three younger brothers. So I was the oldest grandson. I was the oldest son. I just didn't feel right knowing that I could go out here and make money and take it from my brothers and my family. And I know my parents, hate that fact. They hate the fact that I thought like that. And they would have done anything to prevent me from doing such. But that was the mindset, and the mindset was, consumed with, money, cash, hoes, and, go out here and you're sold on these ideas that, you can be big time and you can always get out of the game and change the dynamic of your family. And it's never enough. There's so many rare cases of people who actually just do that and get to that point where they got to that magical number or they got to that magical space and then they just flip the hustle. There has been a couple, but I mean, far few. Those are like needles in a haystack, man. You don't have the ability to get to this special place when you're in the game. There's always a hit. There's always a robbery. There's always a drought. There's always, somebody fucked up some money. There's always something that prevents you. You spend too much money on a vacation. There's always something. Somebody gets ill or sick or whatever. And most drug dealers think cash money, cash money, cash money. We don't think about, leveraging loans and credits and building our credit and all that stuff, man. We just go at it, you know what I mean? Like, cash money. I don't have no uncles, dude. I don't have no uncles, no grandparents, no parents. There has never, ever, 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 ever been someone in my life to give me a leg up or give me an opportunity financially or even in a business sense. I'm not saying that my family hasn't given me opportunities to work for them or, shoveling asphalt and things like that. But as far as like having some inheritance or having somebody that's going to sit there, I couldn't even live with my parents, dude. Like it wasn't an option. I had 2 kids. I wasn't moving back to mom's house or moving in with my dad. You know what I mean? Like I had to go out here and grind and get it. I moved back with my dad for about 6 months after I moved out for 10 months when I turned 18. And that was just to get myself together while I fucked up the rent and fucked up money. But I had my girls, I had my daughters right around the corner. So once that happened, there was no options, you know what I mean, to do that. And at the end of the day, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having options, but for me, that wasn't. So I understand the sense of urgency that you feel and that you need in your mind to think that you need to go out here and go out and start flipping packs. The crazy part nowadays is, bro, you can make so much money off the fucking phone and the internet. Why would you ever want to do something illegal? I watch videos now, they laugh at guys like us who are in the streets and things like that. You know what I mean? Because or who were in the streets, because it's like, dude, you doing all this gangster shit. You can really literally get on the phone and become anybody you want to, start your own podcast, do your own thing, whatever you want to do, and sit here and make money at that. You know what I mean? There's so many small little hustles that you can do. I know Gary Vee was huge on the garage sales that and yard sales that people would have, where, he promoted going out there and buying some stuff and flipping them and all that good stuff and, drop shipping. I mean, there's just so many ways, you know what I mean, to make money nowadays where, that sense of urgency can be, still there, just in a legal way. I can't tell you the amount of stories that I've had, man, that, I remember when my best friend died, you know what I mean? And he, to my understanding, he died of an overdose. And is the first time I ever had, a friend die, man. It was my childhood best fucking friend, man. And I buried my aunt, my grandmother, and I buried my an uncle. And I understood that, right? I did not understand burying my peers, man, and burying such a friend that was so close to me, man. I mean, it was probably it was the most hurtful thing I had ever been through in my entire life. At that point, I was 23 years old. And you know what I mean? Going through that situation and going through that, that loss, man, was just like, we didn't believe in therapy. We didn't know what the fuck therapy was. You know what I mean? You take that shit on the chin, you keep moving on. You keep going forward. You don't sit there and cry about it. You know what I mean? But man, I mean, dude, I remember I'm getting, emotional even thinking about it and talking about it now. I just remember the violence in my heart and the anger in my heart. I mean, man, I hurt so many people in that little run, that little 6-month run of I don't even know if you want to call it healing, but just pain. You know what I mean? Where I would just drink it away or smoke it away, and the next thing you know, I'm looking for the violence. I'm looking for the fight, and I'm looking for this. It was just such a wild time that I struggled recovering from that. You know what I mean? And I had one situation that really helped me recover. I had a dream, and I really believed that. I think that my boy and an angel came down and talked to me in this dream. It was so real, so vivid. I could never replace the way that I felt or replicate the way that I felt waking up from this dream. I woke up crying, sobbing. It was just an incredible experience, and that kind of helped me put it to rest. I believe that my best friend had come and said and visited me that night to tell, because I knew he was dead. I knew he would pass, and I just believed that he came that night to say, hey, it's going to be okay. And oh man, I get choked up thinking about it, because it was such a real experience for me. You know what I mean? One of the reasons why I know that God is real and God is here, because of that feeling and that interaction in that dream. But yeah, I mean, that was a painful thing that, I wasn't prepared for. My other best friend going to prison for 30 years. I had him on the podcast, and, we were shooting up so many different places. I mean, it was, or so many, at so many different people, excuse me, not places. it was crazy. I'm not talking about shooting up drugs. I'm talking about like, I was not a drug user. I was a drug dealer. So I didn't have a problem with using drugs. I had a problem with dealing them. And we would, you know, we were just shooting back and forth all the time. And now, you know what I mean? It's like, it's so like numbing to know that that's what happens like every weekend. You know, school shootings happen all the time. People kill each other on the streets all the time. I mean, a bullet this big changes so many people's lives, and that's just what we were involved in on a daily basis. My buddy got 30 years for shooting up a party at people that, you know, did some foul shit that night. 4 people that, you know what I mean, aren't in our lives anymore. You know, it's crazy because the mindset says go to the extreme and take out the threat, but it's not really a threat and it's not really an extreme. It's just we've put ourselves in that position to make that an extreme and a threat. You know what I mean? And that's the wild part, man. I was playing with guns when I was, you know, 15 years old. You know, that's not something I'm proud of, especially with all the violence that goes on in our area now. I'm not proud of this shit, man. I can't help but think there was a level of responsibility and a level of example that I set for a lot of these young guys and young gals that, you know, were looking up to us or hearing stories about us here locally that decided that they were going to do the same thing. Like I don't feel good about that. I don't feel good about that situation where, you know, that's the life I live and that's the example I set. You know, I'm so grateful and so blessed and thankful that I made it out, that my family's not involved in this shit, that, you know what I mean, that we just got out of that life and without so much damage. You know what I mean? I'll forever be a convicted felon. I'll forever have my rap sheet over my head and the things that I've done and the people that I've hurt forever. And all I can do is do what I can control now and just continue to move forward and help as many people as I possibly can by leading by example in a different way, leading by example for people, giving them the opportunity to come in here and work and, you know, find themselves like I found myself through combat sports and through healing and through therapy and through all the things that I've had to go through to help myself become a better human being, a better man. You know what I mean? I don't sell this shit to everybody. I don't sell this shit to everybody in a third party type of feeling. I sell this shit to everybody that I talk about with the gym and mindset and all that based upon experience, based upon trial and error and living and learning by fire. I've been through it. I've went through it. I've went through just as much. I ain't even getting into majority of the situations, you know what I mean, that I've been through. I've been shot at. I've been cut up. You know, I've been beaten up. I've beaten people up, shot at people. I mean, I've done so much crazy shit that I can't even believe it's my fucking life. I can't even believe that the guy sitting here on the other end of this camera with you is the same guy that was wilding out back in the day, acting like a fucking menace to society. It's unfathomable that that's who I was. And I'm not embarrassed of him. I'm not proud of him. You know what I mean? I just know that was what made me who I am today, right? That were the experiences and the circumstances and the environments that I was in that made me who I am today. And getting up with my boys the other night and just spending time with them, you know, and what's crazy is we weren't talking about old stories. We weren't talking about back in the days. We weren't talking about our glory days. We were talking about what we're doing now, what we plan on doing in the future, things that we're proud of, things that we're happy about. You know, we were enjoying ourselves with each other about now because we made it. We made it out. We made it out. We all got families now. We all got, you know what I mean? Like we really were wilding out here on these streets back then. And it was a time before social media. It was a time before, you know, people could be something they were not and pretend to be something. Right? You had to go outside and you had to go get tough. You had to be who you were. And if you said something, you either followed through with it or you stood on business or you got fucked up for it. And 9 times out of 10, I was the one fucking people up. You know, I was the violent one. I was the crazy white boy that, you know, was you know, proving that he belonged, you know what I mean, with you know, the environment that he was, because, you know, truly I was probably insecure, you know, and truly probably I didn't think I belonged and fit in. So, but, you know, enough with the doom and gloom part and the crazy shit part. You know what I mean? The thing that I strongly encourage and advise people that are listening to this, that are in any different kind of situation or range from that kind of world, is is the one thing that to get somebody to change their behavior and to selling drugs, you're not going to tell them not to do it. That's the mistake I think a lot of people made with me is, my mom and my grandmom and some of my family members, they would try to tell me not to do it, right? I did exactly the opposite, right? I did exactly the opposite of what they told me. And I wasn't trying to hear anything they had to say. And then eventually, the more they said it, the more mute they became, right? What I suggest, what I think would have been more powerful had they had just told me how much it hurts them and how much it breaks their heart. I think if they framed it in a way where they were hurting and I was taken away from their, and I knew I was, but I mean, hearing it sometimes makes it more real. I think that would have been a bigger influence on me to say, okay, you got to chill. You know what I mean? Like, you got to start considering other people, I think when you're talking about with women or a significant other, I think that if you want your man to stop selling drugs, you got to leave him. You got to make it very black and white. It's me or that. And this is what I'm not going to be a part of, because there's countless stories and situations where, the girlfriend, the wife, the baby mama got locked up because of the boyfriend or the husband or whoever, because they were in range of that person dealing drugs. You know what I mean? You have to have boundaries. And if you don't want to go through that, then you have to make that clear. And, you might lose somebody for that, but you're not going to lose your freedom. That's one thing you're guaranteed you're not going to lose. You're not going to lose your freedom. You're not going to lose your life. You just might lose a really good person in the process. But if not, you could at least give them something to think about to try to change your ways. Because as long as you keep coming back to the well, as long as you keep letting us, and I say us in the past tense, continue to take more and more leverage in the relationship while selling drugs and making excuses as to why. Well, look at the trips we take. Look at what I provide you. Look at what I bought you. Look at where we live. Then you're just enabling that behavior, and you're inviting what comes with that to your world. Dude, like I don't talk about like how many houses I've had to move from. I probably moved like 13 times in 10 years, right? I don't talk about all of the, I still do this by habit. I'm always watching who's following me home, right? Like you never know who's following you. No one could know where I lived. So I was always paranoid about the directions that I would go, and I would circle the block. I would go different directions each time. And if I had a car or two that was behind me that I thought was following me, I would shake them 3 or 4 other cars. I mean, it was programmed in my mind to think that way, right? And that's the thing is like, dude, there's nothing more scary to me and more line crossing than somebody kicking in your door and laying you down in your house, especially when your kids are there and your girl's there. Like, that was something that, was just that just couldn't happen. And thank God that never happened to me. And I hope that it never does. But that's something that, when you say, hey, I'm going to be okay with this lifestyle as a significant other, you're going to have to understand that's a reality that could happen. That's a reality that could happen to you. So having that hard no, and this isn't going to work for me, is got to be what's the message, or you're going to just be inviting what comes with drug dealing into your world. I think, if you're in it right now, I think the more prepared and the more of a plan that you build and an exit strategy along with a time and date is important. I think that, you having this plan drawn out and this exact roadmap to taking you to the exit part of that game and what that looks like. And I think talking to OGs and talking to people that, have been in the game and have exited the game or not in the game no more, I think that's going to be vital. They're going to be able to give you some strategies and some understanding of what to do and how to do it. You know what I mean? I always say quit sooner than later, because you rarely make it to that date or that number. But I think building up a plan and building up an exit strategy is critical. You must work. Don't make the mistake. I didn't work. I worked the last 7 years of it because I needed the credit to be able to buy a house. I had all this fucking cash. You got to work. And what I mean by work is build a skill, learn how to do something, learn how to build a skill. I had this horrible attitude of why would I work for, X amount of $100s a week or $1,000 a week when I could make that in a night, right? Or make that in a transaction. So I didn't really take the jobs or the business as serious as I should have, but you should definitely work so that you can build a skill, build a trade that you can fall back on and get out of. One thing I found out is that really wasn't a lot of money, even though it was a lot of cash, even though it was fast. When you look at, return on investments, when you look at what you can invest in your own business and what you can make by doing something more positive and conducive, drug dealing is not a lot of money. There's very few, there's a very small percentage of drug dealers that make serious amounts of money. And most of the time the people listening to this, you're not one of them, right? I wasn't one of them. So, when you're talking about that kind of money, you're talking about, they already have business infrastructures and things like that set up for washing and things like that. So, if you're at that level where you're hood rich, you know what I'm saying? Like, you need to really learn a skill and learn something that you can build and make wealth out of and fall back on, and, the other thing that I would say to the people that are into it right now, man, is, you're know your self-worth. Your money doesn't make your worth. How much money, how many bitches you fuck, and how much, you can drop, and all the shit that you're programmed and you're conditioned to think that makes you a status. All the shoes that you buy and jewels that you rock, trips that you take, that shit ain't your self-worth. Your self-worth is who you are as a person. That's what your family loves. That's what your real friends love, is who you are as a person. And you're so much better than that. Okay. I understand the struggle, and I understand that we have to do what we have to do. Right. I get that. But I also understand that that's also kind of like not the easier way out. That's the path of least resistance, right? It's least resistance to go out here and go hustle up some dime bags or some quarter bags or some pounds or whatever you're trying to do. The harder path is going to be the one that's going to be more rewarding, and hard work always pays off. I don't care where the fuck you're at. Hard work always pays off. So, at the end of the day, it come down to a lot of self-worth for me, that I didn't think I was good enough, and I didn't think I was worthy enough, and I didn't think I belonged. So I sat here and I went and did what I knew I could do. And I didn't realize how valuable I truly was and I am to the world, without anything over my shoulder or without having to destroy lives or things like that. So, and living by those rules, man, those rules are tough, man. They're tough to live by, because there's always a gray area, and there's always a reason why you want to say, I don't want to live by those rules, but they're vital to your survival. And that's the only reason why I'm alive. God, and the fact that I played by the rules, and I played by the rules to a T. But a lot of that came from just my lack of self-worth and who I didn't think I was and where I didn't think I belonged. And ultimately I found out that was just an insecurity and a conditioning that I had to work on. So, hope I didn't bore you guys with this episode. You know what I mean? I just wanted to, like I said, I had to wing this one today, and I wanted to just get on here and share some of the experiences and some of the tales. I might do another one depending on the feedback and what I get. I might do more of these where I talk about stories and talk about, the ins and outs. But I just, man, like I said, I'm just super grateful to make it out. Super grateful to make it out of the game and make it out of that life. And, I have all my limbs, I have great, I'm healthy. I don't have any bullet holes in me. You know what I mean? I don't have any, stab marks in me. You know what I mean? I'm grateful for this shit to be here, to be able to talk to you guys. And I just hope you guys get something from this. So guys, thanks again. Again, if you get value from this or know somebody who will, send this over to them. And please like and subscribe to our channels on any streaming platform, and ultimately leave us a review. Until next time, guys, what are you doing today to become a champion?